Hello. Welcome to Teaching Artistry with Courtney J. Body. That's me. This is a podcast that celebrates artists and advocates for community engagement. And this is We Can't Go Back, a video series in partnership with Creative Generation meant to examine, interrogate, and confront racist policies and systems in the arts. This series amplifies leaders in arts and culture who drive radical change in communities through anti-racist and liberatory policies. Subscribe to the Teaching Artistry with Courtney J. Body YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I live in Brooklyn on the ancestral lands of the Munsee, Lenape, and Canarsie nations. And I am thankful for the land and the water that I have the privilege to live on and work on that have been stewarded by these indigenous nations and many more. And I identify as a Black cisgendered woman, pronouns she, her, and I am uplifting and paying respect to my ancestors who have been stolen from their native lands across the African diaspora and forced into enslavement and oppression throughout the US. I'm also breathing in healing vibes, big, huge healing vibes. As we know, change is happening, but much more needs to happen. And so I want to continue to uplift all Black women in this country for their excellence, hardships, pain, triumph, resistance, resilience, and joy in the midst of racial trauma. So let's get to our guest for this particular episode, a queen unto herself, Elena Newell.
Hi, Elena. Hello. Hi. I love that. Yes, Black women. You guys are great. All we do is good.
Yeah, we're into it. We're all about amplifying and believing Black women, amplifying their voices, amplifying what they have to say, because it's truth, it's love, it's real. So
Yes.
I can't wait for us to get into it. So thank you
Yes.
so much for joining me.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I love this.
So I am really thrilled because we just recently met, but already we're in community, and we're doing a two-part series, or a series within the series. You and I was so together. We are going to learn more about our respective work, but also the fact that we're both podcast hosts. So we're going to learn more about the work that we're pursuing with our different platforms. And so I think what's very, very exciting is the fact that we're both asking similar questions around racial justice, decolonizing the arts industry, and repairing harms from predominantly white institutions. So let's get into you. What is your role in the arts? And tell us about Fourth Wall Podcast. What made you want to start this podcast?
Hey guys, I'm Elena. Pronouns she, her. I'm a cis Black woman. I'm 21 years old. I am an actor, a singer. I will not claim dancer. I would never do that to myself. A director, writer, a podcast host. I am finishing up my senior year at Western Carolina University. I'm getting a BFA in musical theater. Which is crazy during a pandemic that I am majoring in something that can't be done right now. But we live. What else do I do? That's kind of it. I'm a activist, artivist. Someone called that. Somebody's coined that term before. And yeah, Fourth Wall. I'm also the founder / creator of Fourth Wall. Me and my friend Gail founded it together. It came during our first hit of Corona, so right around March, April. We both really wanted to start a podcast. We just didn't know how or in what capacity. We were working with the department head of one of our programs at our school, and she's developing her own company. And so we're like, oh, we can make a podcast for the company, something like that. But in my head, I was like, no, I want something that I have autonomy over, that I have control over. And it just never felt like the right time. And what was the exact moment? I think it was right when George Floyd was killed. I remember being very frustrated because our school and the people I was working with in my department were sending me emails asking me to do things like type up this draft for this grant proposal we're thinking about, or make sure you're looking at this monologue. But no one was reaching out to our Black students to say, hi, this is a terrible time. We're here for you. We feel for you. No one was taking those things into account. And I started to think about all the times that so much was happening in real life, and I was forced to try to focus on things that I didn't think would matter at the time. I was thinking about Shakespeare or Chekhov or something when I wanted to think about the people who look just like me who are getting murdered at a disproportionate rate. Um, and I was like ranting about this to my friend Gail, who is a white woman, and she was like, "Oh, should we like do this?" Because we wanted to do artists talking to artists, and we were like, "Well, what if we specify it and we say artists talking about discrimination and bias in the industry?" Because that's something that people are saying, "Oh, it's bad everywhere," but in theater specifically, it's so easy for people to be like, "Oh, we love everyone here," but that's not actually the case. That's the thing about systemic racism; like it's everywhere. It's not just in one specific industry. Um, so we're like, okay, let's try to create something where we expose that, and we talk to people from all sides of the situation. We talk to specifically Black people dealing with it, to people of different races, to white allies, white people who weren't allies before that now claim ally, and why they made those changes. And we just went for it. We like found people that we kind of already knew of that had relatively big platforms, and just like texted them or like emailed them, and we're like, hi, we know you're doing nothing because pandemic, so like just hop on Zoom for an hour. And like most of them were like, okay. And so now we've had this like really special baby that is like growing every day.
Wow, I didn't realize it was such a young baby. I somehow I thought it was, I don't know why, I thought it had been around for a long time. I also, frankly, didn't realize that you were still in university. So,
Yeah.
what's wrong with your bad self? Like, come on, get it. I love that. And yet, like, there's some commonality here because while my podcast has been around for a long time, I only recently ventured into, during the pandemic, actually ventured into the video sphere,
Mm-hmm.
a variety of theories. So let's talk about it. How many episodes have you had so far?
Okay.
Ish.
So 17 that have been released. Yes. There have been 17 episodes that we have released because usually it's once a week. And there's like 2 weeks we didn't do it within there, but we launched in June and we've done one every week since then, except for like 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, get it. Okay, so let's talk about what are you learning? Let me find my question. Sorry. What? Okay, so I ask this very often about of my guests about concrete actions. So what have you learned in those 17? And obviously you don't have to go one by one, but what have you learned or what concrete actions have you heard about from your guests that arts institutions are striving to do in terms of being fiercely anti-racist?
I think one of the biggest things that I've taken that is an actionable step is putting BIPOC, putting Black artists, I'm going to say Black just because that's my specific experience, putting Black artists in the room where you want to enact that change. I was just having a discussion with someone else saying that, like, no matter how many degrees a white person has, they'll never have the experience of being Black. And so, because of that, they'll never know more than a Black person on what it means to be Black and how it feels to be Black in an extremely white space. And in order to enact that change, they need someone who's come from that place because you do what you know. At some point, if they've only ever been around someone that looks like them, how could they know how Black people feel about these specific situations? We had an episode where we talked to two deans of two fine arts programs, Dr. Harvey Young, who is a Black dean at Boston University, and Dr. George Brown, who is a white dean at Western Carolina University. And our George, the white dean, was saying like a lot of things about like, well, sometimes students don't understand where they're coming, like they don't understand what like the logistics and the background, and they have to get past that. And then Harvey was like, yes, however, we still have to empower those students, because if we don't empower them, we don't make them feel like they're welcome there, how would we ever rectify any of the situations that are going on in our industry? If you like talking about like how can we bring in more Black students, how can we retain these students, if you don't treat the students you have well now, why would they reach out to anyone to come in later? And it's something about hearing it from someone on your level. I'm not saying that he didn't respect us because we're younger than him or something, but like hearing someone on his exact same level explaining to him that because he was a Black man, he understood that if he's not in a place where he felt welcome, there was no way for true collaboration to happen. And so it's all about lifting up Black voices and just giving them the space. Even talking to this Renee Rapp, she's like famous on Broadway. She's a white woman, and she's talking about how she uses her platform not to just speak up, but to directly give that space to other Black artists. And that's like, instead of promoting her classes, she's promoting Black artist classes. Cause she's like, if you can learn from me, you can learn from them. And like actively giving a voice, not just talking about their issues, but giving them the stand to talk about their own issues has been like the thing I've learned most about what people can do to start these conversations. But I think it's also to lead with grace, because no one's going to dismantle racism in a day or in a 1 week workshop. And no one, even if you're like a white person and you feel really intimidated by it, you've been taught your whole life that you're in the right and that you should have authority and that you have supremacy. It's literally been ingrained into your education since you were born. You can't unlearn that in a week. You can't undo 20 plus years of brainwashing in a way, by reading one book, you know? And it's okay. And there's going to be a lot of different pitfalls. It's not like you climb a mountain and you're at the top of the mountain and you're like, oh, great, I'm done. It's like, no, you finish one mountain and you realize you're just at a ledge and you have to keep climbing and it doesn't end. And you just have to know that. And you can't jump into it and say you want to do it expecting there to be some like end result, expecting there to be a deadline where this can all stop, because it doesn't stop, which is okay. You have to give yourself grace. You have to know you'll never have it right. You'll never have it perfect. None of us will, but still preparing for the marathon and not like the sprint, you know?
Yeah, I do know. Yeah, I was just thinking about my own college experience and how I actually have to go back and think through certain moments where, like, there are certain moments where you're like, that was blatantly racist. But then there are other moments where you're like, I didn't look at it like that, but oh, so there are the idea of belonging, especially in theater, I think is it is how I think of it, but it wasn't that way necessarily in, like, you had to prove yourself at every given turn as opposed to being cultivated for growth.
Right.
Which, unless you know any better, you just think, oh, this is the status quo. But like, I heard a wonderful metaphor today, and I loved your mountain climbing metaphor because I love it, because the idea of not being able, but the picture in airport and those people movers, and how we're all just sort of on the people mover, and people are moving at different paces, but we're all going in the same direction. But that all is the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to change the status quo, you have to like turn around and go the other way, and slow down the pacing of that people mover.
Right.
And so that, the idea of a training, being able to do that, that's not it. That's not
right.
One way to start a slow down, but that's not going to stop it and say, okay, now we're done.
Right.
And so there's a lot of work that not only I think our white identifying peers need to do, I think we all do, because we're all indoctrinated with this idea that whiteness, Sonia Renee Taylor, who is my goddess, she talks about is the white supremacist illusion. and how we're all indoctrinated in that. And even somebody like her who literally talks about this and has studied this and has written books about this was saying that, you know, she bought a Porsche and she showed that Porsche, and then somebody like tried to shame her, a white person tried to shame her, and her initial reaction was to go into defense mode and sort of say like why she earned it. And she was like, oh, I need to examine that in myself. Like that's part of the work. And living in the both and world, like that part of the work is saying like, yeah, I bought this Porsche and I understand that that is a capitalist thing, but I also wanted it. And what did she say that I loved? She was like, and I'm gonna rub my nipples all over.
Oh my God. Yes. That's about unlearning there's this content creator, her name is Leandra Yomo, and she made a video. She's a dark-skinned Black woman, and she made a video like, when we're talking about anti-racism, we need to talk about like Black women specifically unlearning that as well. Like the idea that if there's multiple Black women in a room, you're thinking, oh, okay, there can only be one of us, so I have to beat them out. Or kind of what you just said, it becomes so ingrained that it becomes your source of reason. It's like, oh, they won't like me because I'm Black. Like, and that's just automatically, that just makes sense in your head and you keep moving. You don't even think too much about it. Like working on ourselves to unlearn everything. Because you're right. We were all in schools. We were all taught the same level of white supremacy. So we all have to unlearn it.
Yeah. It's just that we didn't benefit from it.
Right.
That's right. So yes, all of those things. And so I'm curious now, you're getting your degree. You're living in a world where you know you're musical theater, which that's not what's happening. But I'm curious about the conversations that you're having and how is that impacting your life outside of being this podcast host, right? So what are you able to glean, and how is it manifesting in other areas of your work, your life, etc.?
I was thinking about this in a lot of ways, specifically like first like talking about the podcast specifically, because I am a very young Black woman working on this project, like leading this project, and I have producers who are much older than me who have stable jobs and are like trying to help steer me in the right direction. Still like finding the authority within myself to say that yes, I'm young, yes, I'm just this young, like not that educated Black woman, but like I created this myself, and I still have authority over it. And if I feel like something's not right, I still am able to say that's not right. We shouldn't do that because it's my project. And this is like working on this and talking to more and more people, specifically because we've talked to a good amount of Black artists, and that's what I am. So watching them just talk about how they're so unapologetically themselves has helped me fight that. Specifically in my college, I know my professors are tired of me. I think I was much more radical than your average, like, because normally there's like 2 or 3 Black people in a musical theater program, and they kind of just try to like assimilate and just get through and live their lives, and then they can go out and be whoever they want to be. But they're like, I just have to keep my head down and do whatever they tell me. I was not that at all from the beginning. If something felt right, didn't feel right, if it felt odd, I was always like, I'm uncomfortable. As one of the only Black people in the room, I'm uncomfortable, and I'm not gonna move forward until we talk about it. I think that's also because my mom is a social worker, so she always like encouraged me and my sister to speak up whenever we felt uncomfortable, regardless of what power we thought we had. And so I also had a whole episode about like talking shit about my program, and like talking about professors who have refused to listen to me and refused to listen to the other artists of color in my program, and how it can be traumatizing. And I had an episode talking to other Black BFA students at top programs in the country, and we all talked about that. And a lot of my professors have listened to the podcast, specifically that episode where I called them out. And it's really created a space now where there's no assuming of how students feel. There's no, well, they're probably fine with it, because they're very clear. At least me and my friends, because I'm also the president of the Black Theater Ensemble here. So like they know, like Elena is not going to like this. Elena is going to speak up publicly about this situation, and so we can't sweep it under the rug. And so for me, at least, it's allowed me to get into rooms that I probably would not have been in prior. Like I shouldn't be able to talk to the dean on a random day about an issue that's bothering me. Like normally like you have to go a couple steps before they let you talk to the dean, talk to your department head, talk to the program head or something, and then maybe. But it's allowed me to try to protect the students under me because I'm not someone, I don't care, especially now, like they can't do anything to me at this point. Um, so like I don't care about me or how they feel about me or if they hate me and never write me a recommendation letter or something stupid. Like this is more protecting like the freshmen that just came in who are so excited to be here and they still don't know why they're being treated differently and it just happens to be that they're the only black kid in their program, like making sure that those kids know that they have a voice and that they are protected by someone in this program even after I graduate. And knowing that they don't have to hide. I think a lot of times in like educational theater, professors don't let you say no in any situation. It's yes. And if it's not yes, then something might have, they might get like blacklisted or you might not do good in class or your teacher might not like you because you don't want to do this thing. And so there's already like a stigma where students are afraid to say no, specifically in theatrical settings. Um, so this has impacted me because I've been teaching everyone around me. No, say no. No is allowed. No is an acceptable answer always. And if they have a problem with that, there are people you can go to. There are, for every professor here that you can't go to, there is another one you can. Um, so that's been really exciting for me as well. Also, like in the ethereal existential world of like, what am I going to be? What am I going to do with my life? I also am so much more relaxed with whatever I want to do because I've discovered that there are ways I can make impacts in the arts specifically. That's not what the kids dream about. I guess it's not like I don't want to be on Broadway. Like musical theater is not even something I plan on doing post grad. Um, Specifically musical theater anyway. But it's shown me that there's so many more things I can do. Um, and it shows me there are things I can do that I have control over. Like the thing about Fourth Wall is I have full control over it. It's mine. It's still related to theater. I'm still talking to like icons. Like one of my biggest theater icons is Michael Kilgore, and I got to interview him. Like I don't even know how he said yes. I literally sent him an email that I found on Instagram, and I was like, "Hi, please," and he was like, "All right." But like I'm getting to still learn and grow and enact change in something that I have full control over. I didn't need my institution to get me to where I am. There's this man made a beautiful video saying that in the theatrical space, you white people can rise all the way to the top without ever having to deal with a black person. But black people have to engage with white people to get success or to get whatever success means to you. You have to. There's not enough spaces where black people are all the way to the top, like, so at some point we have to interact with them. But this is a project where if I don't want to, I don't have to. It's something where I don't have to rely on someone who doesn't have my actual best interest to do what I want. And I think having that like sense of authority over myself is great just because there's so many young actors who talk about like getting taken advantage of and things like that and just wanting to do anything they can just so they can get like their shot. But like I'm not of that mindset. I'd rather be somewhere where I'm appreciated instead of being somewhere that like has a claim because I value myself more than that. And this podcast has like helped me find that value, I think, just like the creation of it.
There's so many things inside of what you just said that I could respond to. One, I love how you talk about your producers being so much older than you, and they're still yet younger than me. So what? All good, all good. I think that what I'm most struck by what you said is that you have a platform that wields some volume and the ability to create space for others to be able to use their voices as well. I think that the fact that you're able to talk to some, like big people within your university as well as within the industry also means that you're hitting on something, I think, that people understand need to be discussed and unearthed. Which is really important. I wondered if you knew about Black Theater United.
I feel like I follow them on Instagram.
Yeah, they're on Instagram. videos in Facebook, and hoping to have somebody on from there. But they're doing some really interesting work. Or if you talk to anybody who is a part of creating the We See You White American Theater document, I'm just curious.
There's some people involved with that who are also involved with Broadway Advocacy Coalition, and I am in contact with some of those people, hopefully to do an interview soon. There's no dates on that one yet, but hopefully soon. Reaching out to those people and just trying to figure that out. I'm also trying to talk to a lot of like, I don't know, I don't want to say underground Black initiatives, but just I find that specifically in Broadway, there's like the 8 Black Broadway icons that people know of that they kind of only listen to, even though there's so many other entities supporting the same thing. So I'm really trying to find a way to like obviously connect with those people, but also try to find the more grassroots, not as, maybe they're not super popular, maybe they don't have a ton of credits, but they're still in the theater industry and they're still talking about these things that matter. That's something I've been really actively pursuing, I think, right now.
That's great. I mean, I guess that's where I was going, was that it just sounds like, one, so I work in an arts education, which is generally for me, it's more about like theater for young audiences and K through 12 or pre-K through 12, as opposed to the higher ed. I do work in higher ed, but again, it's sort of still aligned with the main work that I do around arts education, theater education. So I haven't been in a lot of spaces, but I have been to a few webinars focused specifically on MFA programs, conservatory programs, and how oppressive they can be to students, and what kind of movement there is that's happening and not what movement is not happening. And
yes.
So the other piece of what I heard you just say that I find important is that you are creating space for those to speak within the university, but also, you know, in order for there to be change on a professional level, we have to start at the university and the conservancy level, because, you know, all those things, you know, they need to know the way this works. Like, all of that is based off of like a handful of people making it to Broadway, as opposed to thinking about, you know, the theater industry or theater or entertainment. Like, it's a much wider scope than, you know, celebrity or, you know, like it's about a mindset about how we can be making, one, just like on a very basic, like how we can be telling stories, and how we can shift away from, you know, certain methodologies, acting methodologies, or certain ways, strategies for making theater, or that is so hierarchical that there isn't space for new kinds of stories. Why are we always studying the same folks? And why aren't we studying, if we are doing history, we should always have, you know, Lorraine Hansberry, we should always have August Wilson, but I don't believe that that's happening, right? And that's for everyone, not just, you know, oh, we're doing the Black play this year,
yeah.
right? And so I think that, you know, you have a very strong platform with the podcast, but you also unto yourself have a platform, and that we can all be thinking about what power do we actually yield, whether they give it to us or not, is the thing that I heard you say.
Yeah. And what you just said about like it being ingrained into the system, like not just saying, oh, our professors are racist or something like that, but what you said, I'm required to know who Shakespeare is, who Chekhov is, who Tennessee Williams is, things like that. I'm required. There's like a list of like 20 white men who write plays that I have to know about in order to graduate. Okay. And none of these last week, somebody brought up Dominique Morisseau, and somebody was like, who is that?
Yeah.
And I was like, who is that?
Oh.
What? But they're not required. They know of August Wilson because every once in a while, like one of the Black students will throw it out there for fun, but like they are not required to learn or study about any Black, or not even just Black, person of color, artist of color in our entire industry. One of our buildings is named after Josefina Nigley, who is a Latinx playwright who passed away not super recently, but she used to teach here, and she's a Latinx playwright. And we literally don't talk about any Latinx plays or dive into any Latinx artists in terms of any kind of study. Anything I've done that's by a Black playwright is when it's like, pick your own monologue, pick your own scene. And then if I have the opportunity to, I will pick from them, but we're not required. And even something as small as like our stage makeup class, nobody's taught how to do makeup for brown skin. They're not taught how to light for brown skin. They're not taught how to do costuming and change the colors of your costumes to complement Black skin. There's something they're not taught because our teachers don't know how to do that. So how could they try to teach us? And so we're instantly, I talked about this is like how everyone I know that's graduated from a BFA or MFA program that's Black, they are either leaving their specific field of theater completely because they've been so disenchanted with whatever they've dealt with, or everything they're doing from then on is in spite of their program. Mm-hmm. Or like none of it is due to them in like to them feeling included or supported. It's like they treated me like this, but I'm gonna be better anyway. And that's how they succeed, is like despite not getting the respect or feeling included like I should here, I'm gonna still succeed and I'm gonna still move forward. And you don't think about little things like makeup or something until you're sitting in the dressing room and you're watching them go to every single person and do their hair themselves, like do everyone's hair, and then they like look at you and they hand you a picture and they say, make it look like that. And then they leave you alone and they leave you to your own devices. And it's so, that's something I've been trying, and my professors have been, some of them have been trying in that respect to be like, okay, normally we talk about Ibsen here, but instead we're going to talk about August Wilson. Or maybe we'll learn from like if we're doing like choreographing something, we'll talk about Debbie Allen instead of Andy Blankenbuehler or something like that. They're trying, but it's still not in our curriculums, not mass spread. And until we can do that and like start changing things like that in the shows we do, like that's what I'm really interested in right now, is like fighting those specific things. So I'm glad you brought that up because it's real. And it like, not just like, it's not just that we don't know what we're doing post grad, but it's like we leave feeling
it also
we're expecting to not be thought of.
Yeah, there's the invisibility piece. Like, well, that's those plays barely get made, or or all of a sudden it's Black. Well, then you'll work for a Black theater. What? But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be learning these things. And in fact, that's literally the point, that you could be a mind shift is that we could be all learning this together.
Yeah.
As opposed to just doing, again, that status quo on that people mover. Mm-hmm. So we're winding down, and I usually ask this question of all the guests at the dreaming space. I don't want to point you in any particular direction, but we've been very, very focused on the podcast / your schooling. So you can think about this from that perspective or wider. I like to dream, and I'm curious about what you think a racially just and liberatory world looks like.
I think I'm going to try to describe it in like feelings, if this makes sense, like how I would feel about something. Like I want to be able to walk out of my apartment and not worry about how I'm dressed, because somebody might assume I'm going to try to steal something if I'm wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt. I don't want to have to think about those kinds of things or think of how I'm presenting myself. If I want to go running at night, I want to be able to do that without fear that something terrible could happen to me. I want a space where like my podcast is really irrelevant, like where there's no reason to have a podcast about discrimination in theater, because there is none, because you're talking to no one about nothing, because it's not a thing anymore. It's not so commonplace that everyone can relate to it. It's a space where everyone feels, because I'm big on consent, as I've talked about today, like everyone feels the authority to say no in any situation, regardless if they don't get if not thinking about whether or not they'll get the job or they'll be liked. No is always a valid answer, a space where no one ever has to question that or be worried about it. A space where theater actually looks like the society that we're in, and not just like the one or two shows that have a good amount of Black artists or a good amount of artists of color, but every single show looks like our society. And it's not created to be like the joke, or it's not created to be the punchline, or it doesn't have to be noted that they're Black or that they're different from the rest of the people. They just are that because that's how humans are, because there's a lot of different types of humans in the world. So it makes sense that this play has all of them. Also, specifically, like a place where we see more like able inclusive people, like things like there's like, I've been talking to the artistic director of Deaf West Theater, and like creating a space where like we're seeing more deaf productions because there are deaf artists, there are deaf people in the world, seeing more people who are differently abled, seeing people in wheelchairs, seeing people with any kind of I don't even want to call it a disability, because I saw something that was like, it's not a disability until you create a space where they can't exist normally, until you don't have a ramp in your building. Then they're disabled because you've given them a place where they're starting from behind everyone else. But having things like that where it's not even thought of, we're not questioning, oh, like, is it weird to put someone in this role because it's different or something like that? Like having a theater that anyone, literally anyone, regardless of who they are, can tell the story. Because there's very few plays where you need a very specific person, specifically plays that like stereotypically just have white people in them. Very few of them actually have to deal with like being white, unless it's like right now, like the society standard of being white, like, oh, I'm rich and I live in my own penthouse in New York. Like maybe stereotypically you're white, but like there's so many stories that anyone could tell. And just because it's normal for them to be played by a white person, or for them to be played by a man, or them to be played by anyone, then they can be in. I also want to see more trans people and non-binary people in shows, and they just be in the show, and they not be like, here we are with our trans artist playing this role because we're so avant-garde. No, because if this is a woman, so she can play any female character that she wants to. It doesn't matter that she's a trans woman. Literally does not matter. So just a world where anyone can play any role they want to play with, or any role they feel like they can identify with for any reason, and it not be like a gimmick, or not be like a shtick or something that people do. Like people can just do art, and it's the only thing people are talking about is how moving it was, or how great it was, or like how bad the lights were, or something like so irrelevant, you know? Like people don't have to talk about the one thing that they're using to sell tickets. I think that's a perfect world.
Elena, I just love it. I love it. I love learning how you're looking at the world and wanting the world to look. I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Of course. Thank you. I'm sorry I talk so much.
No, it's great. It's great. Don't ever apologize for talking too much. You don't need to do that. But I not to be that weird, like I just met you and you're half my age and I see so much of myself in you that is crazy, but you're also like so much more put together than I was at your age.
Girl, let's not jump to those conclusions. Let's not do that one.
Well, thank you again for being a part of this series. We're in it. We're in it now. And thank you to everyone for watching Teaching Artistry with Courtney J. Boddie. This conversation and more will be on the audio platform. So subscribe to SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And Elena said it. I'm going to say it. We won't go back. We can't go back. Onwards.
Now is my time to shine. When your time comes, don't postpone it. When others doubt and out, you don't condone it. Truth be told, yourself is your toughest opponent. When your moment comes, grab hold and own it. Never let go, stand tall and hold tight. Overcoming obstacles is the objective in life. Doubters all the night, and until then you shine bright. Cause inside your head, on goes the light. Ignite.